The conference room on Varathus Prime was filled with worried voices. Representatives from 27 different alien species sat around a massive circular table, all of them talking at once. The air smelled strange, a mixture of different alien atmospheres blending together in the neutral station's environment. Outside the large windows, stars glittered in the endless darkness of space. Ambassador Victoria Lane stood near the back of the room, her hands clasped tightly behind her back. She was 51 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair and worry lines around her eyes. She had spent the last 3 days trying to convince the Galactic Council that humanity understood the danger they faced. Now, as she listened to the aliens discuss Earth's fate, she felt a cold knot of fear in her stomach. The Krell Empire had sent an ultimatum 2 weeks ago. The message was simple and brutal. Surrender Earth and all human colonies or face complete destruction. The Krell Armada was already moving toward human space. 847 warships, each one the size of a small city. They had destroyed 40 civilizations in the past 10 years. Their reputation made even the bravest species hesitate. Ambassador Thexelar, a tall creature with blue scales and 4 arms, stood up from his seat. His species, the Vordani, controlled 12 systems and had one of the largest fleets in the Council. He looked at Victoria with what might have been pity in his large yellow eyes. "The human representative has asked for our military support," Thexelar said, his voice translator turning his words into smooth English. "But the Council cannot risk war with the Krell over a species that joined us only 5 years ago." "I'm sorry, Ambassador Lane, but humanity must face this threat alone." Other voices joined in agreement. The Council had rules. They would not start wars. They would not risk their own people for newcomers. Victoria felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face calm. She had expected this response. High Chancellor Moradin, leader of the Stellari species, raised one of her 6 hands for silence. The room gradually quieted. Moradin was old even by Stellari standards, and her silver skin seemed to glow in the soft light of the chamber. "We do not wish to see humanity destroyed," Moradin said carefully. "We have offered to accept human refugees. We have provided safe harbor for your civilians. But military intervention against the Krell Armada would cost millions of lives across the galaxy. The Council cannot justify such losses." Victoria nodded slowly. She understood their position even if she hated it. But there was something these aliens did not understand about humans, something they would learn very soon. "Thank you, High Chancellor," Victoria said. "Humanity accepts the Council's decision. We will handle this matter ourselves." Thexelar made a sound that his translator rendered as a sigh. "Ambassador Lane, you must understand what you face. The Krell have never been defeated. They will not show mercy. If humanity truly wishes to save lives, you should consider their offer. Surrender might be better than extinction." Before Victoria could respond, the chamber's main display screen activated. A young Stellari officer appeared, looking nervous. "High Chancellor, forgive the interruption. A human vessel has just entered Varathus Prime space. They are requesting permission to dock and address the Council." The room erupted into surprised chatter. Victoria felt her heart jump. Earth Command had not told her about sending a ship. What were they thinking? Moradin looked at Victoria with her large dark eyes. "Ambassador, did you know about this?" "No, High Chancellor. But if my people have sent a representative, I ask that the Council hear them." Moradin considered for a moment, then nodded. "Very well. Grant them docking permission." 30 minutes later, the doors to the Council chamber opened. A human man walked in, wearing a dark blue military uniform with silver insignia on the shoulders. He was tall, with short gray hair and sharp gray eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His walk was confident, almost casual, as if he entered rooms full of alien diplomats every day. Victoria recognized him immediately. Captain Jake Morrison, one of Earth's most decorated military officers. He had fought in the border conflicts 10 years ago. Small wars between human colonies over resources and territory. He had a reputation for being brilliant, stubborn, and very hard to kill. But why had Earth sent him? Morrison stopped in the center of the room and gave a small bow to the High Chancellor. "High Chancellor Moradin, members of the Galactic Council, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Captain Jake Morrison, commander of the United Nations ship Defiance." Thexelar leaned forward in his seat. "Captain Morrison, we have been discussing the Krell threat to your species. If you have come to plead for military assistance, I must tell you that the Council has already made its decision." Morrison smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. I have not come to ask for help, Ambassador. I have come to deliver a message from Earth Command to the Krell Empire. The room went silent. Even the background hum of the station's life support seemed to fade away. Morrison turned slowly, making eye contact with several of the alien representatives. 2 weeks ago, the Krell sent humanity an ultimatum. They demanded we surrender our worlds or face annihilation. Earth Command has considered this demand carefully. Morrison paused. We have decided to decline. A rippling sound of surprise moved through the chamber. Thexlar's scales seemed to darken with what might have been concern or confusion. Captain Morrison, Moradin said gently, perhaps you do not fully understand the situation. The Krell Armada consists of 847 warships. They have destroyed civilizations far older and more powerful than humanity. What military force does Earth intend to send against them? Morrison clasped his hands behind his back. We have sent our response, High Chancellor. The UNS Defiance is currently holding position at the edge of your system. There was a long pause. Finally, a small alien with green skin and large ears spoke up. Captain, did you say your ship is your response? One ship? That is correct. The chamber erupted into noise. Aliens talked over each other in a dozen different languages. Translation devices struggled to keep up. Victoria felt her face grow hot. One ship? Earth had sent one ship to face an armada. It was suicide. It was insanity. Thexlar stood up, his forearms spread wide. This is madness. Captain Morrison, one ship cannot stand against the Krell Armada. Are you trying to make them angry? Do you want them to destroy your colonies faster? Morrison waited for the noise to die down. His face remained calm, almost bored. When he spoke again, his voice was quiet, but somehow everyone heard him clearly. Ambassador Thexlar, with respect, you do not understand humans very well. We have studied your wars. We have analyzed every battle the Krell have fought. We understand exactly what we face. He turned to address the entire council. You fight wars with numbers. You build big fleets and smash them against each other until one side runs out of ships. You think military power is measured by how many vessels you can put in space. He smiled again, and this time it looked dangerous. Humanity learned a different kind of warfare. We have been fighting each other for 10,000 years. We have studied every possible way to kill, to survive, to win against impossible odds. We do not need 1,000 ships. We only need one. Moradin studied Morrison carefully. Captain, I hope you are not simply brave but foolish. If the Krell destroy your ship, they will not stop. They will burn every human world. They will try, Morrison said simply. High Chancellor, I have been authorized to share one piece of information with this council. The UNS Defiance was built over the past 8 years. It represents the combined knowledge of every human military strategist, scientist, and engineer. It carries weapons that no one in this galaxy has seen before. It carries weapons we hoped we would never have to use. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each representative. But mostly it carries a message. The Krell demanded we surrender or face annihilation. Our message is this: come and try. Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. She knew that tone. She had heard it before in Earth's history. It was the tone of someone who had already decided they would rather die than submit. Thexlar shook his head. Captain Morrison, you are either the bravest human I have ever met or the most foolish. I suspect you are about to become a legend or a cautionary tale. I hope for your species' sake that it is the former. Morrison turned toward the door, then stopped and looked back. The Krell have 48 hours to withdraw from human space. If they do not, they will learn something about humanity. They will learn why we sent one ship instead of a fleet. They will learn that we do not fight wars to look impressive. We fight wars to win. He walked out of the chamber, leaving stunned silence behind him. Victoria stood frozen, her mind racing. She pulled out her communication device and sent an urgent message to Earth Command. What were they thinking? What kind of weapons could one ship possibly carry? The response came back quickly, just 3 words. Trust the captain. Outside Varathis Prime, floating in the darkness of space, the UNS Defiance waited. It was 800 meters long, small compared to the massive warships of other species. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, with no visible weapons ports or obvious defenses. To anyone looking at it, the ship seemed ordinary, even fragile. The planet New Meridian gleamed blue and green against the black of space, a young world that humans had terraformed over 30 years. 12 million people lived across 3 continents, building cities and farms, raising children, dreaming of futures. Now, those dreams were about to turn into nightmares. Governor Patrick Stone stood in the emergency command center beneath the capital city, watching the evacuation reports scroll across dozens of screens. He was 58 years old, with gray hair and a face lined by years of responsibility. He had helped found this colony 20 years ago, back when New Meridian was nothing but rock and ice. Now he was watching everything they built fall apart. "Governor, we have another problem," his aide said, rushing over with a data pad. "The southern continent shelters are at capacity. We still have 200,000 people waiting for transport." Patrick closed his eyes briefly. "Reroute them to the northern shelters. I don't care if it takes longer. Everyone gets evacuated. Sir, at this rate, we will not finish before the Krell arrive. Then we work faster." Patrick looked at the main display screen, which showed the Krell armada approaching the outer edge of their solar system. 847 ships moving in a formation so large it looked like a metal moon. "How long do we have?" 12 hours, maybe less," Patrick nodded grimly. 12 hours to move 12 million people into underground shelters designed to survive orbital bombardment. It was not enough time, but it was all they had. In orbit above New Meridian, Commander Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the colonial defense ship CSS Horizon. Her ship was small, designed for patrol duty and minor pirate threats, not actual warfare. She was 35 years old with short blonde hair and green eyes that had not slept properly in 3 days. "Commander, we are receiving new orders from Earth Command," her communications officer said. Lisa read the orders on her command screen. They were simple and devastating. All colonial defense ships were to assist with civilian evacuation. They were not to engage the Krell under any circumstances. The defense of New Meridian would be handled by the UNS Defiant, not one ship. They were trusting the survival of 12 million people to one ship. Lisa wanted to scream. She wanted to demand answers. Instead, she took a deep breath and began issuing orders. All ships continue evacuation support. Prioritize the southern continent transports. And pray that whoever is flying the Defiance knows what they are doing. Far above the planet, at the very edge of the solar system where light from New Meridian's sun was just a bright star, the UNS Defiance held position. On the bridge, Captain Jake Morrison watched the tactical display showing the Krell armada's approach. They were moving slowly, confidently, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Lieutenant Sophie Grant worked at her weapons console, running final checks on systems that only she and the captain fully understood. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls, activating sequences that had been prepared months ago. "Package Alpha shows ready status," she reported. "All delivery systems are operational." Commander Alex Turner stood beside Morrison's chair. "Captain, the Krell forward scouts have entered the system. They will detect us in approximately 30 minutes. Morrison nodded slowly. "Let them see us. We want them to know we are here." Turner hesitated. "Sir, the crew is ready, but some of them are asking questions. They want to know how we are supposed to stop an armada with one ship." Morrison smiled slightly. "Tell them the same thing I told the Galactic Council. We are not here to stop them with one ship. We are here to teach them why one ship is all we needed." Turner still looked uncertain, but he nodded and returned to his station. Morrison understood his concerns. The crew had trained for 2 years on the Defiance, learning to operate systems they did not fully understand, trusting that their officers knew what they were doing. Now, facing an actual armada, that trust was being tested. On the other side of the solar system, aboard the Krell flagship Devastator, War Master Drekthar studied the reports from his scouts. The Krell were a warrior race, tall and covered in thick armor-like skin that ranged from deep red to black. Drekthar was old by Krell standards, nearly 100 years. And he had personally commanded the destruction of 15 civilizations. "War Master, our scouts have detected the human defense forces," his tactical officer reported. "They are assisting with civilian evacuation. They are not taking defensive positions." Drekthar made a grinding sound that was the Krell version of laughter. "They run like prey. This will be over quickly. There is one exception, War Master. A single human vessel is holding position at the system's edge. Our analysts identify it as the ship that visited Verathis Prime, the UNS Defiance." Drekthar pulled up an image of the ship on his display screen. It was small, insignificant. He had seen larger cargo vessels. One ship? This is their defense? It would appear so, War Master. Drekthar stood up from his command throne, his massive form towering over the other officers on the bridge. Then we will destroy it first. Let the humans watch their brave defenders die before we take their worlds. Send the order to the fleet. We advance on the human vessel. The Krell armada changed formation, spreading out across millions of kilometers of space. They moved with practiced precision, each ship knowing its place in the formation. They had done this hundreds of times before. It was a standard assault pattern, designed to overwhelm any defense through sheer numbers and firepower. Aboard the Defiance, Morrison watched the Krell formation spread across his tactical display like a disease. They are following standard doctrine, he said calmly. Wide front overlapping fire zones, concentrated firepower. Predictable, Grant added. That is what we are counting on, Morrison replied. He opened a communication channel. All crew, this is the captain. The Krell armada is advancing. Within 6 hours, they will be in weapons range. I want everyone to remember your training. Trust your systems. Trust each other. And trust that what we are about to do will work. He paused, then added quietly, Humanity is watching. The galaxy is watching. Let's show them what we can do. Throughout the ship, crew members made final preparations. In the engineering section, teams checked the exotic power systems that fed the ship's weapons. In the medical bay, doctors prepared for casualties they hoped would never come. In the galley, the cook made sandwiches for the bridge crew because even in war, people needed to eat. 6 hours passed slowly. The Krell armada continued its advance, maintaining perfect formation. Observer ships from the Galactic Council held position far from the battle zone, their sensors recording everything. They expected to document humanity's last stand. On Varathis Prime, Ambassador Victoria Lane sat in her quarters, unable to sleep. She had the Council's observer feed playing on her wall screen, showing the tactical situation in New Meridian system. The Defiance looked so small compared to the massive wall of Krell warships approaching it. Her communication device chirped. It was a message from Earth Command, marked for her eyes only. She opened it and read the single line of text. Whatever happens, humanity chose to stand. Victoria felt tears sting her eyes. She was not sure if they were tears of pride or grief. In the New Meridian system, the distance between the Defiance and the Krell armada had shrunk to just a few million kilometers. The Krell ships began charging their weapons, energy signatures spiking across the electromagnetic spectrum. Their shields powered up to full strength, creating shimmering bubbles of force around each vessel. On the Krell flagship, Fleet Commander Zarkoth had taken direct control of the assault. War Master Drekthar had given him command of the forward elements while the War Master himself remained with the main battle group. Zarkoth was younger, only 60 years old and eager to prove himself. All ships' weapons charged and ready, his weapons officer reported. We are in optimal firing range. Zarkoth looked at the image of the Defiance on his screen. The human ship had not moved. It had not powered up shields. It seemed to be just sitting there waiting to die. Weapons officer, target the human vessel. Concentrate fire from all forward ships. I want nothing left but debris. Yes, Fleet Commander. Zarkoth settled back in his command throne, satisfied. This would be quick. Then they could proceed to the human worlds and begin the real work. Perhaps he would let some of the humans live to serve as slaves. They seemed like a species that could be useful, once properly broken. On the Defiance, Morrison sat calmly in his command chair, watching the Krell weapons charge. Sophie, what is their estimated time to weapons firing? 2 minutes, Captain. And package Alpha status? Deployed and waiting, Captain. Has been for the past 6 months. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Then let's begin the lesson. Activate Package Alpha. Grant's fingers danced across her console. Package Alpha activated. Nothing visible happened. No weapons fired from the Defiance. No missiles launched. The ship remained exactly as it was, seemingly helpless before the advancing armada. On the Krell flagship, Zarkoth frowned. His sensors detected no change in the human vessel. What are they doing? Are they surrendering? Unknown, Fleet Commander. They have broadcast something on all frequencies, but it is just a simple message. Package Alpha released. What does that mean? Before anyone could answer, Alarms began shrieking throughout the Krell. 36 hours passed like a countdown to the end of the world. On New Meridian, the last civilians were being moved into the deep shelters. Governor Patrick Stone walked through the empty streets of the capital city, looking at the abandoned homes and shops. Everything was silent except for the wind. It felt like walking through a graveyard, in orbit. Commander Lisa Hayes and the Colonial Defense Fleet maintained their position between the planet and the approaching Krell. They could not fight the Armada, but they could watch and relay information. Lisa sat in her command chair, drinking cold coffee and staring at her tactical display. The Krell had reorganized their formation. They were more spread out now, maintaining distance between ships. They had learned from their first encounter with humanity's weapons. On the Galactic Council observation ships, dozens of species watched the sensor feeds with a mixture of fear and fascination. Ambassador Thexler sat in the observation lounge of his vessel, his 4 arms crossed over his chest. Next to him, High Chancellor Moradin watched the displays with her large, dark eyes. The humans had one chance to surprise the Krell, Thexler said quietly. They used it well. But now the Krell are prepared. 735 warships against 1. There's no outcome where humanity survives this. Moradin tilted her head thoughtfully, and yet Captain Morrison did not seem concerned. When he addressed our council, he spoke with complete confidence. Either he is a fool or he knows something we do not. Or both, Thexler replied. On Earth, billions of people watched live feeds from the battle zone. In homes and bars, in schools and government buildings, everyone stopped what they were doing to watch. Some prayed, some cried, some simply sat in silence, waiting to see if humanity would survive the next few hours. In the New Meridian system, the Krell Armada completed its final preparations. Fleet Commander Zarkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, studying the tactical display. The human ship, the Defiant, still held its position at the edge of the system. It had not moved. It had not fired. It simply waited. Fleet Commander, all ships report ready status, his tactical officer said. Nanomachine purges are complete. All systems are functioning normally. Shields are at maximum strength. Zarkoth nodded slowly. This time we will not underestimate them. We will maintain maximum spread formation. Each ship will target independently. We will overwhelm them with coordinated fire from multiple angles. He paused, looking at the image of the Defiance on his screen. And this time, when they use their tricks, we will be ready. He opened a fleet-wide communication channel. All ships, this is Fleet Commander Zarkoth. The humans embarrassed us with their nanomachine attack. They made us look weak. Today we show them the price of that humiliation. Today we show them why the Krell Empire has never been defeated in open combat. Advance and destroy. The Krell Armada began to move forward, 735 warships accelerating toward New Meridian. They came like a wave of metal and fire, their weapons charged, their shields glowing with power. It was the largest military formation most of the galaxy had ever seen. On the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison watched the Krell approach on his tactical display. He sat perfectly still in his command chair, his expression calm. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations with focused intensity. Captain, the Krell fleet is accelerating, Commander Alex Turner reported. They will be in weapons range in 14 minutes. Sophie, what is the status of Package Beta? Morrison asked. Lieutenant Sophie Grant looked up from her weapons console. Her hands were steady, but Morrison could see the tension in her shoulders.
Package Beta is ready, Captain.
All systems show green. But sir, once we activate Beta, there is no hiding what we can do. The entire galaxy will see. Morrison nodded. I know, that is the point. Open a channel to the Colonial Defense Fleet. A moment later, Commander Lisa Hayes appeared on the main screen. She looked exhausted but determined. Commander Hayes, you and your ships need to fall back to minimum safe distance, Morrison said. What is about to happen will be dangerous for anyone too close. Lisa stared at him. Captain Morrison, what exactly is about to happen? Morrison smiled slightly. You are about to see why Earth Command spent 8 years building this ship. Fall back, Commander. That is an order. Lisa hesitated, then nodded. Understood, Captain. Good luck. The colonial defense ships began moving away from the battle zone, accelerating toward the inner planets. Lisa watched her sensors as the Defiance remained alone, facing the approaching armada. Morrison stood up from his command chair and walked to the front of the bridge. looking out at the stars through the large viewing window. Behind him, he could hear his crew working, preparing for what came next. "Captain, the Krell are entering extreme weapons range," Turner said. "They are powering up their main guns." Morrison turned to face his crew. "All right, everyone. This is what we train for. This is what humanity built us for. The Krell think they have adapted to our tactics. They think spreading out their formation protects them. They think 700 ships can beat one." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was hard as steel. "Let's teach them how wrong they are. Sophie, activate package beta." Grant's fingers moved across her console with practiced precision. Activating package beta. Weapon systems coming online. All across the Defiant, systems that had been dormant suddenly activated. The ship's hull began to change. Sections that appeared to be solid metal separated and slid apart, revealing weapon systems hidden beneath. The entire vessel transformed from what looked like a normal warship into something else entirely. Something designed for one purpose: overwhelming firepower. On the Krell flagship, sensor officers stared at their displays in confusion and growing alarm. "Fleet Commander, the human vessel is changing configuration," the tactical officer reported. "We are detecting massive power surges. Multiple weapon systems are coming online." "Fleet Commander, the energy readings are impossible. No ship that size should be able to generate that much power." Zarkoth leaned forward in his command throne. "What kind of weapons?" "Unknown, Fleet Commander. The signatures do not match anything in our database, but the power levels suggest weapons capable of planetary-scale destruction." Zarkoth felt uncertainty creep into his mind. The humans had surprised them once. Were they about to do it again? "All ships, maximum shields. Evasive protocols enabled. Prepare for anything." On the Defiance, Grant completed the activation sequence. "Package beta fully online, Captain. All weapon systems ready. We have target locks on all Krell vessels." Morrison returned to his command chair. "What is our firing solution?" "Captain, targeting computer has analyzed Krell formation and movement patterns. It has identified optimal firing sequences for maximum effect. Estimated engagement time, 14 minutes to neutralize all hostile vessels." Turner looked at Morrison with wide eyes. 14 minutes? "Sophie, there are 735 enemy ships out there." "I know, sir," Grant replied calmly. "The targeting computer is very efficient." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "Fire when ready, Lieutenant. Let's show them what humanity brought to space." Grant's hands moved across her console. Firing. The Defiance opened fire. What happened next was something that no one in the galaxy had ever seen before. The ship's weapon systems unleashed destruction on a scale that defied belief. Railguns fired projectiles that moved at 30% the speed of light, crossing millions of kilometers in seconds. Missiles streaked away from launch tubes, each one guided by an artificial intelligence smart enough to outthink any Krell pilot. Energy weapons, powered by exotic physics that Earth scientists had spent decades developing, reached across space to strike with pinpoint accuracy. The Krell armada began to die. Ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as antimatter warheads breached their hulls. Railgun projectiles punched through shields like they were not even there, carrying so much kinetic energy that they tore vessels apart from the inside. Directed energy beams struck with such precision that they disabled weapons and engines without destroying life support, leaving crews alive but helpless. On the Krell flagship, Zarkoth watched his armada being torn apart and felt something he had never experienced in 50 years of warfare: complete helplessness. His ships tried to return fire, launching thousands of missiles and energy blasts at the Defiance, but every single shot missed. The human ship seemed to know where each attack was going before it was launched. Its defensive systems intercepted missiles before they got close. Its shields, when they needed to activate at all, absorbed energy weapons like they were nothing. "Fleet Commander, we have lost 83 ships in the first 3 minutes," his tactical officer reported, her voice shaking. "Correction, 91 ships, Fleet Commander. They are predicting our movements. Every time we try to evade, they hit us anyway. It is as if they can see the future." Zarkoth gripped the arms of his command throne so hard his claws dug into the metal. How is one ship doing this?" His science officer, who had been frantically analyzing the battle data, looked up with horror in her eyes. "Fleet Commander, I have analyzed their targeting patterns. The human ship is not just reacting to our movements. It is predicting them based on tactical algorithms. They have..." The space around New Meridian seemed to ripple, like water disturbed by stones thrown into a pond. Fleet Commander Zarkoth watched his sensor displays light up with warnings and alerts. His bridge crew shouted reports in confused, frightened voices. Fleet Commander, massive energy signatures detected, the tactical officer said, her voice rising in pitch. Multiple contacts emerging from quantum space. Distance 2 million kilometers and closing. How many contacts? Zarkoth demanded. The tactical officer's hands shook as she worked her console. 47. No, correction, 62. Fleet Commander, they are still appearing. Energy readings are off the scale. On the main display screen, space itself seemed to tear open. Points of light appeared, growing larger and brighter. Then massive objects emerged, sliding into normal space like whales rising from ocean depths. They were not ships. They were weapons platforms, each one the size of a small moon, bristling with weapon systems that dwarfed anything the Krell had ever built. Zarkoth felt his blood turn to ice. What are those things? His science officer stared at her displays, her face pale with shock. Fleet Commander, those platforms have been in quantum storage. The humans placed them here months ago, maybe years ago. They have been waiting dormant until activated. How many? Zarkoth asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know the answer. 78 platforms, Fleet Commander, and each one is generating enough power to destroy a planet. Across the Krell fleet, panic began to spread. Ship captains broadcast frantic questions. Crews abandoned their posts. Some ships tried to activate their faster-than-light drives to escape, but found that something was jamming their systems. The humans had thought of everything. On the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison watched the quantum platforms materialize on his tactical display. Each one appeared as a blue icon, forming a perfect sphere around the Krell armada. It was beautiful in a terrible way, a cage made of weapons that could end worlds. Commander Alex Turner stood beside Morrison's chair, his face grim. Captain, all platforms report active status. Weapons charging sequences have begun. At current charge rates, they will be ready to fire in 6 minutes. Lieutenant Sophie Grant worked at her weapons console, coordinating the targeting data between the Defiance and the platforms. Captain, the platforms can maintain current positions for approximately 48 hours before needing to return to quantum storage for maintenance. After that, we would need to cycle them out in shifts. Morrison nodded slowly. He had hoped it would not come to this. The nanomachines had been meant to disable without killing. The Defiance's weapons had been meant to show overwhelming force while minimizing casualties. But the Krell had not listened. They had kept fighting, kept attacking, even after seeing what humanity could do. Now they would see the final truth. They would see what humans had really brought to space. Morrison opened a fleet-wide communication channel, broadcasting to every ship in the system, Krell, human, and the Galactic Council observers. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UNS Defiance. What you are seeing are humanity's Omega platforms. Each platform carries weapons capable of destroying everything within 1 million kilometers. They were placed at strategic points throughout human space during the past 3 years, hidden in quantum storage, waiting. He paused, letting the magnitude of his words sink in. The Krell Empire asked why humanity sent one vessel. The answer is simple. The Defiance was never meant to fight you. It was meant to give you chances to leave. The first chance was the nanomachines. You could have withdrawn then, humiliated but alive. The second chance was the Defiance's conventional weapons. You could have surrendered with honor, defeated by superior technology. Now you face the third chance, the last chance. On the Krell flagship, Zarkoth listened to Morrison's words and felt something he had not felt in 50 years of warfare. Genuine terror. Not fear of death, which any warrior knew, but terror at facing something so far beyond his understanding that resistance seemed meaningless. He opened a channel to Morrison. Captain Morrison, the Krell fleet surrenders unconditionally. Please do not use those weapons. We acknowledge our defeat. We will leave human space immediately. Morrison's response came quickly, but his voice was colder than before. You already tried to surrender, Fleet Commander. I rejected it. You had 2 chances to leave peacefully. You ignored both. You continued to attack a human colony, even after seeing our capabilities. Now you want mercy? Zarkoth felt desperation rise in his chest. Captain Morrison, please. I have 60,000 warriors on these ships. Many of them are young, fighting their first battle. They do not deserve to die for following orders. On the Defiance, Morrison closed his eyes briefly. He thought about the 12 million humans sheltering underground on New Meridian, waiting to see if they would survive. He thought about the 40 civilizations the Krell had destroyed. He thought about his grandmother's words about true strength. Commander Turner spoke quietly. Captain, Earth Command has sent a message. They are leaving this decision to you. They say this moment will define how the galaxy sees humanity for generations. Morrison opened his eyes and looked at the tactical display. 78 platforms surrounding over 400 Krell ships. With one command, he could end the Krell Empire's ability to threaten anyone ever again. He could avenge the 40 civilizations they had destroyed. He could ensure that humanity would never face a threat like this again, or he could choose mercy. Lieutenant Grant turned in her seat to look at him. Captain, platforms will reach full charge in 4 minutes. After that, the decision window closes. Morrison stood up from his command chair and walked to the front of the bridge. He looked out at the stars, at the distant sun of New Meridian, at the space where the Krell Armada drifted, helpless and defeated. He remembered something else his grandmother had told him years ago. They had been walking through a memorial to one of Earth's old wars, looking at the names of the dead carved into stone. She had put her hand on his shoulder and said, "Jake, humans have always been good at killing. We have been doing it for thousands of years, but the measure of our species is not how well we can destroy. It is whether we can choose not to, even when we have every right to do so." Morrison made his decision. He turned back to his crew. "Sophie, stand down weapons platforms." "Do not fire." Grant looked surprised. "Captain?" "Stand down all weapons." "You heard me." Grant hesitated for just a moment, then her fingers flew across her console. Weapons platform standing down. Charge sequences halted. Morrison opened a channel to the Krell fleet. "Fleet Commander Zarkoth, your armada is finished. Your ships are disabled. Your warriors are defeated, but unlike you, we do not slaughter the helpless." He paused, making sure every word was recorded by the Galactic Council observers. "We are going to repair life support on all your damaged ships. We are not touching weapons or engines. You are going to drift back to Krell space over the next 6 months with plenty of time to think about what happened here. When you arrive home, you will tell your empire exactly what you saw. Tell them that humanity sent one ship because one ship was all we needed. Tell them we could have wiped you out but chose not to. Tell them that if the Krell Empire ever threatens human space again, next time we will not send a ship at all. Next time we will simply activate the platforms that are now stationed in orbit around every major Krell world." On the Krell flagship, Zarkoth felt shock replace his fear. "You are letting us live?" "We are letting you live," Morrison confirmed. "But make no mistake, Fleet Commander. Those platforms surrounding you right now, they are just the ones we are showing you. We have hundreds more. And yes, before you check your sensors, there are indeed quantum signatures in orbit around your homeworld and every major Krell colony." Zarkoth quickly pulled up sensor data from Krell space, data that was transmitted to his flagship in real time. His science officer confirmed what Morrison claimed. There were quantum signatures around every Krell world, dormant weapons waiting. The humans had not just prepared to defend their space. They had prepared to end the war on Krell soil if necessary. "But how?" Zarkoth said, his voice barely a whisper. "How did you place weapons around our worlds without us detecting them?" Morrison's voice carried a hint of dark amusement. "Fleet Commander, we have been aware of the Krell Empire for 15 years. We knew eventually you would come for us, so we prepared. We sent stealth probes throughout your territory. We mapped every world, every fleet position, every defense, and we placed our insurance policies. The question was never if we could defeat you. The question was whether you would force us to prove it." On Varathis Prime, Ambassador Victoria Lane sat in the Galactic Council chamber, watching the live feed with the rest of the delegates. The room was completely silent. Every representative stared at the screens showing the massive weapons platforms surrounding the Krell fleet. High Chancellor Moradine finally spoke, her voice filled with something like awe. "They could have destroyed the Krell completely. They chose not to." Ambassador Thexler slowly shook his head, all 4 of his arms trembling slightly. "They have weapons in our space too, they must. If they placed them around Krell worlds, they certainly placed them around ours. We have been living under human guns for years and never." 3 months after the Battle of New Meridian, Captain Jake Morrison stood before the Galactic Council for the second time. The chamber looked the same as before, with representatives from 27 species seated around the circular table. But everything else had changed. The delegates no longer looked at Morrison with dismissal or pity. Now they looked at him with respect, caution, and in some cases barely hidden fear. Morrison wore his formal military uniform, dark blue with silver insignia. He stood straight and calm, hands clasped behind his back, waiting for the session to begin. Ambassador Victoria Lane sat in the human delegation section, watching Morrison with mixed feelings. She was proud of what humanity had accomplished. They had defended themselves against impossible odds. They had earned respect from species that had dismissed them as primitives. But she also worried about the price of that respect. The galaxy now saw humans as warriors first and everything else second. High Chancellor Moradin called the session to order. The chamber fell silent. Captain Morrison, you have been summoned to this council to answer questions about humanity's military capabilities and to discuss the terms of our new relationship. As you know, the council has voted to grant humanity full membership status. With that membership comes responsibilities. Morrison nodded. I understand, High Chancellor. What would you like to know? Ambassador Thexelar stood up, his forearms crossed over his chest. Since the battle, his attitude toward humans had changed completely. The dismissive arrogance was gone, replaced by careful respect. Captain Morrison, the Council would like clarification on the extent of your weapons deployments. You stated that humanity has placed defensive platforms around Krell space. Have you placed similar weapons around other species' territories? Morrison met Thexelar's gaze steadily. Ambassador, humanity's defensive strategy is classified information. However, I can assure the Council that our weapons are deployed purely for defensive purposes. We have no interest in threatening species that pose no threat to us. It was a careful answer that said everything and nothing. Morrison had learned diplomacy from Victoria during the past 3 months. Never lie, but never reveal everything either. A small alien with pale blue skin and large eyes spoke up. Her name was Ambassador Pelrin, and she represented the Minari Collective, a peaceful species that controlled only 3 systems. Captain Morrison, many smaller species like mine are concerned. We do not have the military power to defend against threats like the Krell, but we also worry that humanity might use its power to dominate others. How can we trust that you will not become the next Krell Empire? Morrison considered the question carefully. It was fair and it deserved an honest answer. Ambassador Pelrin, I understand your concern, but let me point out something important. Humanity had the power to destroy the Krell Armada completely. We chose not to. We could have used that battle to demonstrate our willingness to annihilate enemies. Instead, we demonstrated our willingness to show mercy. He paused, looking around the chamber. Humanity did not come to space to conquer. We came to explore, to learn, to find our place among the stars. But we also learned from our history that peaceful species need to be able to defend themselves. Otherwise, they become victims of species like the Krell. Moradin leaned forward in her seat. Captain, the Council appreciates your reassurances. However, we must address a practical matter. Your weapons platforms represent technology far beyond what most species possess. The Council would like humanity to share this technology with member species for mutual defense. Morrison had been expecting this request. He and Victoria had discussed it many times over the past weeks. His answer was ready. High Chancellor, humanity is willing to share some of our defensive technology with Council members. However, some systems are too dangerous to share freely. The quantum platforms, for example, require extremely precise control systems. In the wrong hands, they could cause catastrophic accidents. He pulled out a data pad and displayed information on the chamber's main screens. What we propose is this. Humanity will share shield technology, advanced sensors, and improved propulsion systems with all Council members. We will also offer to help species upgrade their existing defense fleets. In exchange, we ask for access to Council research databases and cultural archives. The delegates talked among themselves, discussing Morrison's proposal. After several minutes of debate, Moradin spoke again. The Council finds your proposal acceptable, Captain Morrison. We will establish a joint technology commission to oversee the sharing of knowledge between humanity and other species. Morrison nodded. Thank you, High Chancellor. There is one more matter I would like to address. Yes, Captain? The Krell Empire is currently rebuilding its fleet. Our intelligence suggests they are adapting their tactics based on what they learned at New Meridian. While we do not believe they will attack human space again, they may pose a threat to other species. Humanity proposes establishing a mutual defense agreement. If any Council member is attacked by an outside force, humanity will provide military assistance. The chamber erupted into surprise conversation. Ambassador Thexler stood up again, looking at Morrison with something like disbelief. Captain Morrison, are you saying humanity would go to war to defend other species? Yes, Ambassador. That is exactly what I am saying. We believe that collective security benefits everyone. Besides, it is better to have humans as allies than to wonder if we are enemies. Moradin studied Morrison for a long moment. Captain, your offer is generous, but it also raises questions. What does humanity want in return? Morrison smiled slightly. Peace, High Chancellor. Just peace. And the knowledge that we are not alone in the galaxy, that we are part of something larger than ourselves. The vote on humanity's mutual defense proposal took 2 days of debate. In the end, 18 species accepted the offer. 9 species declined, preferring to remain neutral. The Krell Empire, of course, was not offered membership in the agreement. After the council session ended, Morrison and Victoria walked together through the corridors of Varathis Prime. The station was beautiful, with large windows showing the stars outside and gardens filled with plants from dozens of different worlds. You handled that well, Victoria said. Better than I expected, actually. You are learning to be a politician, Morrison laughed. I would not go that far, but I am learning that sometimes words are more effective than weapons. They stopped at a viewing window that looked out over the docking bays. Morrison could see the Defiance in the distance, a dark shape against the stars. What happens now? Victoria asked. The Defiance cannot patrol forever. Earth Command will need to build more ships eventually. They are already building them, Morrison said. 5 more vessels like the Defiance are currently under construction. They will be ready in 2 years. But I think the galaxy is not ready to see a human fleet yet. One ship created enough fear. A fleet would create panic, Victoria nodded. So we move slowly. We share technology. We build alliances. We prove that we can be trusted, exactly. The battle at New Meridian was necessary. It showed the galaxy that humans cannot be pushed around. But now we need to show them something else. We need to show them that we can be partners, not just warriors. They stood in silence for a moment, watching ships come and go from the station. Finally, Victoria spoke again. Jake, can I ask you something personal? Of course. When you had the Krell at your mercy with the platforms ready to fire, what made you decide not to destroy them? The Council expected you to. The Krell had destroyed 40 civilizations. Everyone would have understood. Morrison was quiet for a long time. When he finally answered, his voice was soft. I thought about my grandmother. She spent her whole life studying warfare, developing weapons that could kill millions. But she always told me that the goal of military power was not to use it. The goal was to make using it unnecessary. He turned to look at Victoria. If I had destroyed the Krell fleet, I would have proven that humanity has powerful weapons. But by letting them live, I proved something more important. I proved that humanity has wisdom. And in the long run, wisdom is more valuable than weapons. Victoria smiled. Your grandmother would be proud. I hope so. Across the galaxy, word of humanity's actions spread quickly. The battle footage was analyzed by military strategists of every species. The images of the quantum platforms became symbols of humanity's mysterious power. Stories about the Defiance and its crew turned into legends. On the Krell homeworld, Fleet Commander Zarkoth stood in front of a classroom full of young warriors. They listened intently as he described the Battle of New Meridian, taking notes on their datapads. When he finished his lecture, a young Krell warrior raised his hand. Instructor Zarkoth, if the humans have such powerful weapons, why do they offer to defend other species? Why not simply conquer the galaxy? Zarkoth considered the question carefully. It was one he had asked himself many times over the past months. Because, Cadet, they understand something that the Krell Empire forgot long ago. Real power comes not from forcing others to obey, but from making them want to stand beside you. The humans could conquer through fear. Instead, they chose to lead through example. That makes them far more dangerous than any conqueror.